Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heart of Sports with Jason Springer and Jeff Cohen, powered by ELEC 825. We are thrilled to join you on WWDV 860 AM and 97.5 HD2, part of the Beasley Media Group, ready to help you move into the weekend, talking about all the news in the world of sports. Jeff, after suffering through the Phillies loss long after midnight early this morning, you decided that it would be better to start the day talking Sixers, right?
Somehow you just didn't. Are you ignoring what that music was?
I didn't hear it. I wasn't listening. I thankfully your technology isn't working so that I can't hear whatever song you're playing over there.
Really? Huh.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
Rutgers fight song.
Oh, the lack of fight from
Yeah.
Rutgers. Okay, well I got Keith
Oh, the
Pompey
duck, the
here,
duck.
who's Keith Pompey is here to talk a little Sixers with us. He's already fired shots at Rutgers before we even get on the air and start the interview. You're just upset that you had to end up watching Rutgers games because those guys might have ended up being available for the Sixers to draft with the way the season went. Let's be honest, Keith. That's what it's about, right?
I think I watched like 30 seconds of one game. I was like, man, no, maybe a couple minutes. I was like, dang, this is awful.
We didn't
I
play
mean,
defense this year, Keith. It didn't go well.
it looked like I don't know if it was the coaching or if it was like the players, but it just seemed like the trend nowadays, or you get these all-star guys who go to these programs and try to elevate them, but then you realize it's not really good for the team setting that they're trying to do, and it just is a waste of time for the coach and the player. That's what it looked like this year to me with Rutgers.
So I've told Jeff for years, I have a saying, Rutgers gonna Rutgers. And that's what we do. And so I don't even get
To
my,
be fair, he uses that saying a lot with a lot of different things.
but it comes out of my, failures at Rutgers regularly. I mean, that's what happens. You think there's a team and then there isn't. So I will get my hopes up again next year, just like I do with the Sixers. And then I will get crushed just like I did with the Sixers. So, Keith, first of all, my condolences for you having to watch this crap all season because I know it's your job, but man, you saw some bad basketball this year, man.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's crazy because you look at it and you say to yourself, if I'm not getting paid to watch this stuff, and I didn't travel to all the games this year, so there were certain games that I watched on TV and it was hard to watch. You know what I mean? Like when you're in the arena, you're paying attention, you're doing this, you're that. You may say, wow, that was a bad play. But when you're basically watching them on television and it's just as easy to switch to another channel. I mean, to watch Negative and Afraid or watch another NBA game or women's basketball, college basketball. It was really hard this year, and especially once they start tanking, because those games were basically the equivalent of G League games being played in NBA arenas towards the end, latter stages of the season.
It does bring up an interesting question as far as the perspective of somebody in your position. Since COVID, it has become more and more common for commentators, reporters to kind of watch the game from home or not be in the arena. Can you explain from the perspective of a reporter why it's so important to be in the arena, what you notice differently that we can't see when we're watching on television?
It is, and that thing is what they did is, the reason why I didn't go to all the games is because actually they took me off for two games because it was so bad. They were just like, we're not, just come home, right?
So
That
your
happened.
bosses had the same reaction that Jeff has had to me all season. Like I'm
Yeah,
not allowed to even text him about the Sixers anymore without getting like nasty grams back. Like, how dare you send me a Sixers update here?
yeah, it was bad, but it's important to be inside the arena. Like I'm gonna be honest with you, when there was the COVID situation, when they went to when were they were in Kissimmee, Florida, the Inquirer sent me down there because there's a lot of things you can't see on television, especially when you got a guy like Joel Embiid who's injury prone. Next thing you know, is Joel on the bench. What is Joel doing? How are people interacting? What's going on? Like, so there's a lot of things that you pay attention to, just like an NBA scout would. Like NBA scouts, when they're in the arena, they're not just looking at the plays, they're looking at like the signs the coaches are giving and things like that. I'm not paying attention to that, but I'm paying attention a lot to body language. There are times where there may be even an altercation on the bench, or the player and the coach don't see eye to eye. And these are things that you see and you follow up on, and you get questions. Now, prime example, which last week, Lonnie Walker, or not last week, a couple games ago, Lonnie Walker got into an on-court altercation with one of the Washington Wizards players. Lonnie Walker was not made available after the game to the group, to the media. I walked over to him and asked him about it. I was the only person to do that. So what happens is you get that information. Now, if you're on TV and if he doesn't if he's not a part of the scrum, he's not going to talk about it. And even if he's in the scrum, sometimes people aren't even going to ask, right? So for me, going there is where you get your info. That's where you get the nitty, the gritty, and stuff like that. And you're right. Since pandemic, you see a lot of guys saying, "Hey, I covered the game," and then you look at them and you're like, "Dude, you're looking at the game on the couch. It's really nothing you can get from being away." And I I think it just cheapens what it is. Like, you're supposed to be an expert, um, and not an armchair expert. And but if you sit at home and you're not covering it, and you're not covering it in person, then all of a sudden you become an armchair expert. Your analysis is no different from my sons, or my daughters, or my cousins or something like that. And no, I don't have a son, but I'm just saying as generally what people would say.
When you're watching from wherever you're sitting as a reporter at the game, did you see anything positive that comes out of the season? I guess what I'm looking for is, if people are healthy next year, is the coaching, are the coaches coaching? Do you see on the sideline the thing we don't see when we're watching on television, or even if we're at the arena? Do you see the coaches coaching? Do you see hope that this group of coaches can put something together if people are healthy next year?
That's a great question. I don't feel like the coaching, and I get it. A lot of people are killing Nick Nurse and saying a lot of different things, but I don't feel like the coaching was a problem this year. And here I'm gonna break it down. Two reasons. When Nick Nurse came here, we all talked about how he was a outside the box type of coach. He did some crazy things, and people loved it. Like, oh yeah, he's going to do a triangle and two. He's going to do a box and one. He's going to come up with these crazy lineups, right? We also talked about how he is this fiery dude that's getting into it with everyone. Well, he did both things. The difference is that when he won a championship in Toronto, they had a loaded roster, right? Um, well, the Sixers were supposed to have a loaded roster this season, but they played 15 games together with their big three. So when you have a guy like Ricky Council, that you're saying, okay, Ricky, you're going to be Paul George today. Okay, Yabusele, you're going to have to be Joel Embiid today. And if it doesn't work out and it looks bad, it's kind of like, well, you knew the guy was going to gamble, but now he's gambling with these dudes and he's not gambling with with the star players. The one thing that I will say is that when there was a couple games that really impressed me with them, and one was the Christmas Day game against Boston, right? Um, with the coach, and I felt like he did a pretty good job. There was a stretch during that stretch. I think they won 10 out of 13 games. But then again, it all comes down to Joel Embiid. Once Joel Embiid got injured, like all of a sudden they're rolling. And then they go to Golden State and they get spanked in the mouth. And then next thing you know, Joel Embiid does not play again for a long time. And then you're saying to yourself, I think he may have played like a little. No, he played 3 quarters against that Brooklyn game where they crushed Brooklyn. And then after that, he sits down. Then he comes back again and he looked horrible. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he shuts down. He shut down for the season. So I feel like the problem is it wasn't the coaching. It was just that he didn't have the talent. And let's be honest. Think about all the different variations to this team that Nick Nurse had to go through.
He had like
At
50
first,
different starting lineups or something like that. And not because he wanted to, because guys weren't available.
yeah, but not only that, I'm talking about, let's go back to last year. So last year, you start off, you got the James Harden, the PJ Tucker. You knew it was only a matter of time before Harden leaves. So then all of a sudden, you get the LA Clippers, and everyone's saying to us, oh, they're only going to be short timers. They're not going to be that good. But then the team starts rolling, right? They look really good. And then the trade deadline comes. And then, oh, Patrick Beverly, the heart and soul of the team, is gone. Marcus Morris, another sharpshooter 3-point shooter, is gone. So they're bringing in these guys who they're telling us that, oh, these guys are going to fit in. But deep down inside, they really got acquired these guys to get draft picks, right? So then they leave. And then this season, it's the same thing. Everyone's telling us Caleb Martin is the right guy. Okay. Reggie Jackson is going to bring us veteran leadership. He's going to do all these other things. They trade Reggie Jackson for a guy who was a two-way guy and also gave up a first-round pick to get the two-way guy and then converted him. And then Caleb Martin, gets traded so they can get Quentin Grimes. So, you know what I mean? So to me, when we look at the coaching, a lot of people are going to, kill the coach, and I get it. But to me, it just seems like Red Auerbach couldn't win with this squad. I'm just being honest. Like, he couldn't. And you can say what you want about Phil Jackson. He wouldn't take this squad. You know what I mean? He just wouldn't. So when we look at it, it's easy to talk about the coach and say how bad of a coach he is. But to me, the problem is, y'all, when we look at this, if you get rid of the coach, and I'm sorry if I'm being long winded, but if you get rid of the coach, it's going to, and we can say what we want about these coaches, but you had two NBA championship coaches that you let go and on this team, and the team is struggling. So it ain't the coaching, it's the culture problem. It's something else. Because at the end of the day, you got rid of Doc Rivers, and now people are talking about the coaching. We're talking about two of the best coaches in the league right now, regardless of how you feel. Their resumes say they are two of the best coaches in the league. So it's not them. The problem's bigger than them.
Is there a way to change the culture without changing Joel Embiid? It seems like we're just in a holding pattern until we know what his health is. He's going to undergo the arthroscopic procedure this week. Who knows what that does for relief for him? It's his second surgery on the knee in 14 months and his third in 9 seasons. What are your thoughts about changing the culture and having the current players be a part of that?
It's weird because, I guess you can change it if you have like a real serious conversation with him. And who knows, maybe he may look at it like, I'm not the guy anymore. I got to do whatever I can. But I think that's kind of hard to change a culture with a guy who was a MVP, a 7-time All Star. When healthy, he's recognized as the most dominant player in the league when healthy, right? So to me, it's tough. Like, I think he is the culture right now, and unfortunately, his legacy is a guy who can't get you out of the second round, a guy who can't stay healthy. Now maybe you can say as a third player or maybe as a complementary player, he can help you but at the same time, like you said, I mean, this is the third surgery that they're going to have in 9 years on that knee. The second one in 14 months. Joel Embiid is the culture, and unfortunately, um, it's not a good culture at the 76ers. It's just not. I think that there's lack of accountability, and that leads to people becoming injured, not being in optimum shape. It leads to underachieving in the playoffs. It leads to not getting the best out of other players when they come in here because, they all come in and they look around and you're saying, oh, you could get away with this, or you could get away with that. Oh, okay, look, okay, this is how they doing it over here. It's like a country club kind of setting. So I think that what that does is, it breeds underachievement.
The Denver Nuggets got rid of their general manager and their coach. If the Sixers were to get rid of just one, which one would change the culture more? Does it have to be the general manager who changes the players, or does it have to be the coach? Because people keep saying to me, well, you know what? Let's bring now Malone's available. Let's bring him in. Well, he's not going to put up with this culture. He's probably out of Denver because he didn't want to put up with some of the culture that was there.
The thing is that the answer would be the executive would have to be the one to move, right? Because they're the ones who create the culture. But if we go back, y'all, this has been the culture since day one, right? I mean, it just has. So, a lot of people, I think they come in here, that the culture is already inherited, and you stick with it. Now, I will say this: Doc Rivers tried to change it, and he was the coach, right? He tried to change it, but now he's no longer here. But yeah, it's typically it's the GM that has to change a culture, and I think that the problem with Malone is, right now when you come into a place and you have such veteran guys who are already established, and you come in with that rah rah stuff, and they're looking at you like, bruh, you got to go somewhere. Like, we're not listening to you. And so it may have an impact on guys like Ricky Council, Justin Edwards, Jarrett McCain, people like that. But Joel Embiid, Paul George, nah, bro, you're not doing that to them. I mean, they're already established. They already got their bread. Like, what you going to do? Trade me? Get rid of me? Like, huh? Like, you know what I mean? So, I don't feel like a lot of people says it's going to work, but no, you need it from the front office, and you need to do it with players who are young, not guys who are already established, because they'll tune you out. I mean, look at the Phoenix Suns. Frank Vogel went there. He tried to be the guy, and they got rid of him. The Brooklyn Nets. What's the coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers? What's his name? He'll probably get Coach of the Year. Oh my gosh, he used to be with the Brooklyn Nets years ago, and then he was an assistant coach with Golden State. But but anyway, he's a heck of a coach, and they ran him out of Brooklyn. Ran him out of Brooklyn. Now he's with a young team in Cleveland with young players, and they're listening to him. So that's the reason why Kenny Atkinson. So that's the reason why Kenny Atkinson is having success. When you have these veteran dudes, they don't want to listen to that. Unfortunately, that's the way the league is coming nowadays, because it's easier to get rid of the coach than it is to get rid of the star players.
So where do we go? Because you've got damaged goods with your stars that create a culture that can't be changed unless one of them is likely not here, but you can't move them because who wants them? So you're bringing back this culture of players who were injured this season. Who even knows when Embiid will be available? I mean, the thought is that George and Maxey at least would be available to start the season next year. But like, where
is there a game in Iowa?
I just remember, but it's funny you say that, because we had Keith on from there, and Embiid was not in the game for pre-scheduled doctor's appointment, supposedly. Like, you talk about the culture inside the team. As a fan, I don't believe what they say anymore. So, like, I see my eyes, and like I'm still trying to squint to see the playoffs. Like, I don't know what to do as a fan here.
Now, I will say this about the squint to see the playoffs thing. I know a lot of people clown the guy for saying it, but at that point, they did come off of a pretty big win, and they were roll. Everybody thought that, okay, we're going to get these guys back, and everything was going to
One
happen.
win.
He's basically
There was one win.
But it was also, you got to realize, remember, that's when Maxey and the guys, I believe they beat Cleveland and they beat another quality team. Like they won like a stretch of games with Maxey and the Miracles, right? And then all of a sudden they go and they play Denver and they lose a close game to Denver. They played the Boston Celtics, remember? And that's when they were like up on like 18 in like the second half, and then the Celtics came back. So you come back and you say that, and everybody, so you say that, and everybody's like, yeah, we got Joel coming back, we got all this other stuff, and then it just fell apart from there. So I get what he was saying. It just that the timing just wasn't right, or the 76ers didn't back him up. But where do you go? It's tough because the problem is the reason why it's tough to say where you're going to go is because, as you pointed out, I think that, Joel Embiid, people may take a gamble on him if the price is right. I mean, the thing is right, just because you're thinking if he's dominant, he can help us win a championship. You think that. But again, that money might scare you off. With Paul George, it's going to be harder, in my opinion, to unload that because a lot of people are looking at it like, okay, Paul George came here, but the only reason why he came here is because they were the only team willing to give him that $211.5 million over 4 years in free agency. So he came here because of the money, not because of the game, right? So then you look at that and you factor in his injury history is just as extensive as Embiid's, maybe not as many surgeries. You look and you see how he was unable to blow by players. You look and you see the podcast, you see all these other things. So you're questioning yourself. Okay, he's 35, about to be 36. What's the love like in the game? And I got 3 years left on that deal. And, right now we're looking at him as a third option on this team, right? So I think it's going to be harder. Now with Embiid, because 7'2", 280, you know, when he's on, even though we don't know if he's coming back, but it's one of those things, I think it might be easier. So when you talk about the fate of the 76ers, they could be screwed, man. I mean, honestly, because right now what you have to do is you have to hope and pray that you can get a high enough draft pick to either possibly trade it or get someone that you can like help pair next to Maxey, right? And you also have to hope and pray that Maxey can be the guy that can lead a team, that can be the face of the team and become that difference maker that you're going to need him to be. So
don't you have to first hope and pray that you get the draft pick?
Yeah, you have to hope and pray that too. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think they're doing a splendid job of tanking. I got to commend them on the tanking.
By the way, it's
they do have
their own
experience
fault.
doing it.
Jeff will tell you, I remind him every week, it is their own fault. They have to hope and pray for this because of Al Horford. So
yeah, and
they
isn't that crazy?
They put themselves in these situations where now, as a fan, I'm upset when my team wins because it might mean longer purgatory for me.
Yeah. I mean, that was the crazy part is how things change, because when we look at Daryl Morey, right, you say the best thing that he's done since he's been here was getting off of Al Horford's contract. Like the James Harden situation didn't work. The Paul George thing didn't work. You know what I mean? You missed out. Like even like it was a lot of guys you could have got. PJ Tucker didn't work. None of that. The one thing that he did was the team was in financially in bad shape, and he got rid of that Al Horford contract. People were ready to give a parade, right? And then now we look at it and saying, well, maybe Al Horford wasn't as bad as we thought. It was just the system, the culture. And now it's like, in order to get rid of him, you had to throw in a 2026, 2025 first round pick that everyone thought, oh, that pick isn't going to matter. The Sixers are going to be contending for a championship. They're going to
They're going to
be
get
this
past
and
the
that.
second round. It's going to
Yeah,
be great.
exactly. And so now, it's crazy because that is the move that might have been his biggest achievement since coming and being the 76ers president of basketball ops. And now you look at Al Horford playing well. He has an opportunity to win back-to-back NBA titles, and the Sixers have to hope that OKC doesn't get their pick.
Well, you said something chilling before, which is that if they have this pick, that maybe they trade it.
I knew you were going to hear that.
No. They need to draft correctly. They need to draft young, up and coming, promising players without a history of injuries. I cannot imagine if they go star hunting again with a pick. And I mean, I guess they could trade a pick in McCain or a pick in somebody to try to, but do we really want another aging veteran to add to this group? Or do we need to sit there and say, we want to root for this team if these guys are healthy, but we also want to root for a promising future instead of taking one more shot at this? And by taking one more shot, you're giving up a draft pick again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that's always an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trading a pick is always.
Yeah, I don't want that option.
It depends on who you get. Like, I think if you have a top 2 pick or maybe a top 3 pick, then I think you have to keep it, right? Especially if you get number 1, right?
You could take one of my Rutgers boys, Keith.
Yeah, you can take one of them. Yeah, you can. I mean, you can. I mean, I think both of them
I think they'll both go top 3.
Will be solid fits for them. I just think that when you get down to number 5 or if it's number 6, we're talking best player available, then you have to think long and hard. And here's the thing: think long and hard in regards to, let's say, if a team really wants that pick and they're willing to take, and I don't think it's going to happen, but they really want that pick, and you convince them to say, okay, but we'll give you Paul George and the pick, and you get a player. I think that's something that's you kind of like.
So Daryl's back to where he started from with trying to move out contracts like Al Horford for picks.
Yeah,
We've come full circle, Keith.
But I'm just saying, like, if you can do that, like, I'll swap a young talent that we already have that people already know of, to do things, because my thing is, I mean, just because you get the pick doesn't 100% mean you're going to draft the right guy too.
And it doesn't.
If it's a top 3 pick, I think you're fine. But outside of that, I think that's where it gets dicey.
And with this team, it doesn't mean you'll keep them here. I mean, there are times where we've picked guys and we let them go. Jeff goes crazy at me bringing up Isaiah Joe all the time here. We wouldn't let him on the basketball court.
Yeah.
All right. I'm at a loss. I want to be a fan and I want to root for this team, but I don't know what direction to go. What is your advice to me as a reporter who covers this team? What should I do? Do I
pick another team?
Jeff's telling me that I, have to be careful bringing my kids down because of the product they will see on the court. So, like, what do I and he's also told me stories of people who are picking other teams to root for. I don't want my kids to root for another team. I unfortunately want them to suffer as Philadelphia fans just the way that I did. But is that the best path forward through this?
So your kids are Rutgers basketball fans too?
Look, my kids will suffer just like I have through life. Okay, it only makes you stronger.
I got you. But here's the thing: I think that right now, I guess you got to take a wait and see approach, because right now the difference between this time and when they tanked before during the process. At least the process, you got to give them credit. I mean, they accumulated assets, draft picks. Um, they didn't make the right decisions with them, but they also had salary cap to whereas they can go out there and get players. So although we're back to stage one, the future appeared brighter back then than it does now. You know, right now you look at it, and the only person left from that time is Joel Embiid, and he's about to undergo his third surgery, knee surgery. You know, you got Paul George, who is basically looks like he's no longer the Paul George that was a 9-time All Star. You have, you have a couple young, banged up players. You, but at the same time, it just doesn't seem like with the second apron and everything that the Sixers are in position to be able to maneuver enough to be able to become a contender like the Boston Celtics or the Cleveland Cavaliers. So for me personally, I would have to, before just having blind loyalty, I'm gonna have to see what they do. I mean, because like Jeff alluded to, a lot depends on that draft pick. If you get it, if they don't get that draft pick,
That's a
it's
problem.
it is a problem. I mean, it really is a problem. And I think they could be set back for years. So it's kind of like it's to a point where I think a lot of people had blind loyalty for years, and they were just like, "Oh, they're going to do it. They're going to do it." But right now, all it's been has been lip service. I mean, it has. I mean, and it's also been one of those things. Let's keep it real. We all grew up. Well, Jeff is from North Jersey, but Jason, you and I are from the Philly area, and Jeff knows the history of the Sixers too. From like it's one of those things where Dr. J, Wilt Chamberlain, all this, the Sixers have the third most wins in NBA history behind the Lakers and the Celtics, right? Or the Celtics and the Lakers. They have the third most Hall of Famers players behind those two teams. But when we go back to reality, the last time they've been out of the second round was 2001, right? I mean, so like it's not the same product that we were accustomed to growing up. It's just not. And
All
but
right.
what we keep thinking is that it is, and it's not. And that's why people keep getting let down.
All
You
right.
know,
Well, we got 30 seconds left. A lot right here. If you could model, if you could pick a team that would be transported into Philadelphia, which team would you want the Sixers to be modeled after?
the Boston Celtics, quick, fast, and hurry, because what they
Oh,
did is
painful.
they did it through the draft, and then after they got their players through the draft, what did they do? They made moves to get complementary players. It would be the Boston Celtics.
Keith Pompey, we need better basketball so we can have you on the show more. I mean, that's just a fact. So we appreciate you coming on, breaking it down with us, giving us some time, and we will talk to you soon as the playoffs go forward without the Sixers in it.